There is a law that exists beyond the typical laws that man has created, justice system that we see failing before our eyes. And this is the natural law, the universal law, and that is Libra. And we are here today to talk about the Libra full moon happening on April 1st or 2nd, depending on where you're located on the planet. For Eastern Standard Time people, it's happening at 10:12 p.m. on April 1st, April Fool's Day, on a Wednesday, which is a Mercury day. And this is Water Within Astrology. My name is Carly. Thank you for tuning in. If you could please like and subscribe, share this video if it resonates with you. But let's get into it. We have this happening on Mercury Day, like I said, April Fool's Day. And Mercury is already the archetype of the trickster. Mercury is going to play a really big part in this because we have Mercury now out of retrograde, still in its post-shadow phase. And we have the sun and the moon at 12 degrees, sun at 12 degrees of Aries, and the moon at 12 degrees of Libra, opposite each other on the wheel of the zodiac. Aries, as we know, is the first sign of the zodiac. Libra is the first sign of the zodiac that initiates the winter months. So we have an equinox in Aries, the spring equinox, and then we have the fall equinox in Libra. These are both cardinal signs, so we're moving through an initiation. And it's really packing a punch because this moon is opposite Saturn and Neptune freshly in Aries as well. They are still hanging out in the first decan while the sun is now at 12 degrees, so in the second decan. But we have them there in Aries, and it's not too far off to be in opposition. So they are big players, and with outer planets that move less frequently, them being freshly in Aries is still energy that we're feeling the aftershock waves of, and we're feeling them. We're getting used to feeling what that feels like, this new world. So the next thing we are going to talk about is the ruling planet, which is Venus. Venus rules over Libra, and the goddess is ever present in the myth of Libra as well. So first and foremost, Libra is not a god. It is a Greek word for the cosmic scales, and the cosmic scales have been through a lot over the years with its mythology and its lore. First and foremost, Libra was the claws of the constellation Scorpio, and then later was given its own constellation, separate from Scorpio. Obviously, it's still there in the sky the same way, but it was separate in its own constellation, in its own right. And then Virgo is the other constellation on the other side of Libra that comes before Libra. And Virgo is a constellation represented by a feminine being, a virgin. And she is said to be holding the scales of justice. Now, that's the constellation, and that's what has happened over the years. And when we look at the mythology of Libra, we see the goddess is still ever present. So Themis was the goddess first associated with Libra, the scales. The goddess, or she was technically a Titan, so older than the gods, older than Jupiter, older than Zeus. Jupiter and Zeus are the same. And Themis was actually one of the nurses of Jupiter. And so, we know Zeus and Jupiter as the god of Olympus. We know him as the main guy, you know, like he was ruling over Olympus. And even he was submissive to Themis. Themis is a word that means universal law. And she was assigned the scales, and she was kind of like a cosmic messenger for people to come and be judged. But she was not the one to carry out the punishments. So she was simply the bearer of the scales, and she was a blindfolded goddess holding one sword in her hand and the scales in the other. And Themis had a daughter named Astraea, and Astraea was living on Earth with humanity and was given the task of witnessing where they were at as far as justice and universal law goes. And she was so heartbroken by the state of humanity that she left and went to live in Mount Olympus. She was completely devastated to the point of abandoning humanity. And I feel her because it is a time right now. And she left behind the scales to remind humanity that cosmic law cannot be evaded. It cannot, no one is above the cosmic law. And this is not something that anyone, any human, God or human, was creating. This was just the natural state of balance that the world is in. And if you went against that, there were problems. And so in my past videos talking about Libra, I've also spoken about Ma'at, which is the Egyptian goddess who weighs the soul at the end of life. In one way, she's holding the scale where your heart is on one side of the scale and the cosmic Ma'at feather is on the other side of the scale. And if your heart was heavier than the feather, then you were given to a demon to be devoured. And then if you were balanced, then you were free to enter into the eternal realms. So there is a feeling of lightness with Libra. There's a feeling with, of course, balance. And there's a feeling of letting go of harboring pain, harboring resentment, harboring vengeance, harboring, any sort of ill will feelings. After all, Libra is ruled by Venus, the goddess of love. And Venus is sitting pretty at 2 degrees of Taurus. She is just freshly in Taurus. She moved into Taurus March 30th. So literally 2 days before this full moon. And Venus has been on a really epic journey leading up to this moment of her being in Taurus, which is another Venus-ruled sign, so she's super happy to be there. She was really not happy in Aries, and not to mention being unhappy and being debilitated, being in Mars' sign of Aries. She also had a conjunction with Chiron in Aries at 25 degrees on the 26th of March. So that was Friday before. I'm actually recording this on a Tuesday, so we're leading up to this Chiron-Venus conjunction in Aries. And what that looks like is coming back to our themes of Chiron in Aries, which have been discussed in previous videos, such as abandonment, such as any wounding around the masculine, any feelings like we can't do things the way we want to, like get things done. We can't be direct. We can't be effective leaders. We can't be, we can't grapple with the idea of being a beginner at something, we're feeling like we have to constantly prove ourselves with Aries, Chiron. We're feeling like we, what happened to us when we were young that was out of our control. These wounds are just like coming up and we're feeling stuck by them. We're feeling like trapped and we feel like we can't heal. Because Chiron is that archetype of there's this wound that can't be healed, but through the efforts of healing it and through the working with that wound, we then can start to heal it, not fully, but we can start to, gain wisdom and we can learn and we can, become more accustomed to working with that wound as opposed to it working on us. And we have no awareness, we have no context about what's going on and we can't name it and all this different stuff. So that's been an initiation with Chiron for a while in Aries, and now this Venus in Aries coming up is like a healing balm on those wounds. It's also perhaps recognizing where those wounds show up in our relationships, and they show up around the heart space. They show up around our sense of self-worth, especially with Aries. Our sense of, again, like getting things done in an effective way, maybe like our relationship with money with Venus. But I think it's important too that we recognize that Venus and Aries were lovers in myth. They were not married, they were lovers. They were having an affair because Venus was married to Aries' brother. Plot twist. So that's a whole thing. It means that there could also be moments where we're looking at where we haven't been making the right decisions in love and where we've like been attracted to, like the bad boy or the bad girl, or like we're attracted to things that actually point to where we've been wounded, like daddy issues, mommy issues, whatever it is. Like we're attracted to maybe even chaos, because Aries is the god of war. His sister, named Eris, is the god of chaos, goddess of chaos. And she was actually Aries' like only friend in the whole like pantheon. And she's the goddess of chaos. So like sure, they were friends, but like goddess of chaos plus the god of war, like that's a tough combo. That's a tough fate to have. Anyways, so there's a lot here to unpack, and I'm going to do my best to move through it as with as much organization as possible. But that's kind of just something that I'm letting myself be a beginner about with these videos, with myself in general, is like learning how to move through these videos organically and authentically, because I'm literally just channeling and flowing. It's flowing through me. So Venus in Taurus, hanging out 2 degrees. She's happy there. She's able to take some rest, and she's able to put down maybe a sense of urgency in Taurus that she had in Aries, put down a sense of needing to prove oneself or needing to, work from a survival mode type of energy, because Aries is very feral and very much like, hindbrain, which is sex, hunger, food, sleep. Those are the priorities of the hindbrain. And Aries in myth was known for being impulsive, reactive, violent, and all of that was stemming from his own abandonment wounds, because he was Jupiter's son, so Zeus's son, and he was rejected by Zeus, and Zeus favored his sister, Athena. Athena was also associated with war, but she was the strategist, and she was the one who stayed not off of the battlefield, but like she was the one to stay in the tents and to strategize and to kind of work with war in a more higher way, where Aries was the impulsive frontline guy who just like charged into battle without thinking. It is said that Aries was someone who honored, or rather, he favored warriors that moved from a place of honor and had a sense of honor in battle. So there is that about Aries. And, now that we know that he was abandoned, not only by his father, but also by his mother, and grew up in a household where Zeus and Hera, or Jupiter and Juno, were always fighting, and there was always this like feeling of like Zeus was cheating on her with whoever, and Juno never left because she just would rather take vengeance, and she is kind of this archetype of like the scorned woman. And so, it wasn't a good time for him growing up, and that's very like archetypally Aries, right? Is like, what happened to us when we were young? What is our story? And how have we now seen that play out in our adult lives? And where have we taken responsibility or not to heal or not? Aries essentially is the archetype of the toxic masculine. And he is the embodiment of what it looks like when the toxic masculine goes unchecked. Unchecked by Libra, right? Because Libra is that scales. Libra is the cosmic law. And we all, I think, can agree at this point that there is a lot of unchecked toxic masculine playing out in the world right now. And we can empathize with them, and we can know their story, and we can start to see them from a different lens, the way that I'm starting to see Aries from a different lens, knowing that its lore is like very, it's very understandable why Aries turned out the way that he did. But that doesn't mean it's okay, right? Like there's a difference between understanding and allowing, right? And Libra is this archetype that can allow too much and can be too understanding and too self-sacrificing. Where Libra can be too self-sacrificing, Aries can be too selfish, right? And there's the balance to find between the two. So where have we as a collective become too self-sacrificing, or too passive, too afraid to rock the boat, too afraid to speak our needs, because Libra struggles with knowing its own needs, knowing itself in general, but like it shows up in relationships because relationships are the mirror, right? Relationships are the mirror for all of us to understand, like, okay, we're either learning what we don't want or we're seeing what we do want, and we're always in this balancing and checking moment where we're like, okay, this is what I need. Is this relationship in alignment with those needs? And those are always subject to change, right? And we have a responsibility to ourselves to advocate for ourselves, to understand ourselves, to defend our hearts, because our hearts are precious and our lives are precious, right? So where have we lost our ability to defend ourselves? To defend like the heart of humanity is really kind of the big theme here. it's no secret that we need to hold people accountable for certain things right now. But at the same time, there is a karmic, cosmic justice system that is already doing that for us. Is it up to us to condemn? Is it up to us to judge? You know, like only God can judge is very commonly said, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I'm definitely not saying like our justice system needs to be gone, but it's clearly not effective right now. And so we are being asked to really look at that, to really like start to ask the questions about what needs to change, because we can't go on like this, right? Unless we want to just keep self-sacrificing and you know, like that's where has that gotten us, and how do we feel? Like how does all of that sit with the heart space? Because that could be very Chiron, Venus, Aries moment, where we're realizing like, where have we self-abandoned? Where have we, you know, like lost our ability to even trust ourselves, lost our ability to feel like we're worthy of good things? Libra is often associated with a very materialistic and like luxurious lifestyle, because Venus is that luxury and opulence. And, you know, the biggest thing about Libra is that it is the only sign in the zodiac that is represented by an inanimate object, the scales. And so there's like obviously that's where the materialistic part comes in, but there's like an impersonal aspect to Libra where the justice system kind of has to be separate from the emotional part of it, right? Like even though we can have empathy for our oppressors and we can have understanding for like where they came from and why they turned out the way they are, there still has to be a part where justice is going to be served, and none of those feelings matter. What matters is what is right and what is wrong. You know, like a universal morality, and that morality comes from our own inner compass, where you feel like it's okay or you don't feel like it's okay, right? Like where do those feelings of guilt either come in or don't? And I realize like not like a lot of people do horrible things and they don't feel guilty, and a lot of people who don't do that much bad still feel guilty, you know? So like that's not a fair gauge, but there is a recalibration of the inner morality compass that's happening, I think, where maybe we're starting to wake up and realize how much we've let slide, how much we've been tolerant of, how much we, you know, how much balance there is or there isn't going on right now. Because the big shifts that have happened in the outer planets and that will continue to happen are going to keep giving us new perspectives and cleaning the slate for us to start new and for us to build a better foundation for the new world to be built on, right? Because I think a lot of what is happening right now is we're exposing the faulty foundations of what first of all, our country, if you're living in the United States, was built on, what patriarchy really is, what capitalism really is, where all these different ideals, or rather, you know, these systems have permeated our psyches and they live rent-free in our minds, and we have internalized capitalism, internalized patriarchal systems that we don't even realize are those things. because they've just been running in the background, and we've been conditioned in this way and that way and this way and this, like so many different ways that we've been conditioned by culture to keep those systems in place. For example, you know, we as a society have idolized a man, either as the leader of our government or the leader of our religious systems, right? Because we all know that the United States was founded on Christianity, essentially, and, you know, capitalism is this whole, like, or rather colonialism is this whole idea that Christian men could come in and tell other people that they had to start believing what they believe, they had to start worshiping their God, they had to start submitting, right? Because that's another part of colonialism, is like submission, and it's part of Christianity as well, like submission to the one God. And that carries over into the government system, right? Like submission. And there is a feeling of submission that we now are probably all experiencing, either consciously or unconsciously, in the wake of these really shocking events and these really traumatic truths that have been revealed about our world leaders, the files. And we now are like maybe petrified with submission, right? Because we've been conditioned for many generations to be submissive to the leaders and to maybe just let them get away with whatever they did, because we are too afraid to rock the boat. We're too afraid to hold them accountable, because they have the power in our eyes, right? Like in our eyes, they have all the power. But I need you to know that that is a Pluto and Capricorn construct that now we have been out of for almost 2 years. Pluto is now in Aquarius. It is sitting at 5 degrees of Aquarius at the time of this full moon. It has never been in 5 degrees of Aquarius as long as any of us have been alive who are watching this. And so this is new territory, and Pluto in Aquarius is about bringing the power back to the people and about connecting in groups, connecting with support, connecting with, just people in general, and finding a common humanity, finding a common, a cause to bond over and to come together over. And unfortunately, it looks as if the cause that we're all going to bond over is, war breaking out, which is very Libra, Aries, right? Like, because the war is happening in Aries, we come together, Libra, and we work together in relationships where, and when I say relationships, I mean we work together, friendships, businesses, whatever. It could very much be romantic, but I think we're expanding past all that now, because we need numbers. Like, there's power in numbers. And these one relationships, like isolating in those isn't good either. So just because you have a romantic partner doesn't mean, you've won. It's like you gotta like connect with the community, and you've got to play your role. Because isolation is like one of the worst things that we can do as human beings. And there's a reason why in prison systems, isolation is one of the worst punishments that you can give a person. Solitary confinement is the word I was looking for. But like that's almost a fate worse than death, right? And I think there could be a lot of dark thoughts happening around this time, especially because we still have Mercury in Pisces at 14 degrees, and it's not going to clear its shadow until the 19th of April. And so it's important for us to have that awareness. It's important for us to continue not to escape reality. It's important for us to, continue to forgive, because that's what's weighing our heart down. And we've been working with these Pisces themes. We still have Mars in Pisces also, which I think is really helpful, because this Libra full moon is opposing a Aries stellium, and we're moving forward past this full moon into a new moon in Aries, where we're going to have, I believe, 7 planets and points in Aries, and that is like unfathomable. And so, like, giddy up, y'all, like, fire horse year, y'all have been warned, like, here we go. So the lineup in Aries we have is, of course, the sun at 12 degrees. We have Saturn at 5 degrees. We have Neptune at 2 degrees. And then we have Chiron at 25 degrees. And, the week leading up to this full moon, we also had Saturn and Neptune both have their Cazimi points, which means that they were meeting up directly with the sun. They've been invigorated with the sun's rays. They've been invigorated with that God essence, that idealistic essence, that wisdom, that light, that consciousness, right? Sun represents consciousness. And so they've been renewed, and they are opposing this moon, and the moon is lit all the way up, right? The moon represents the unconscious, and when it's full, we finally have the light of consciousness, the light of the sun, shining fully on the moon. And so those unconscious realms where we still might have not known, where we were self-sacrificing and we were turning a blind eye and we were living in fear around rocking the boat and all the things that I've already said, those things are able to be seen now at this time. And it's very important that we address them, because so the glyph of Libra is a line and then a line with a hump and then the rest of the line. So it basically looks like a scale, but it also looks like a horizon line. And with Libra, we're moving into the new horizon with this full moon. What do we need to do to fully step forward into that new horizon, to like start to walk there? Because like I said, this Aries energy is going to say, it's not time to walk, it's time to run. Like for real. So the Cazimi was both of the Cazimis were really potent moments right now at the time of this recording. The Cazimi for Saturn is tomorrow. So there's a feeling with Saturn, Cazimi is like reality, wake-up call. Especially with Aries, it's like, okay, like time to have your boundaries up with Aries and Saturn. Saturn is the boundaries, Aries is the self. And we've had so much Pisces that we really might not even know what a boundary is at this point. Aries is quick to cut people off, and Saturn is, the god of limitations and barriers and borders. And where do we need to put up borders to protect ourselves, to self-advocate, to call our life force energy back to us too? Because Aries can be so burnt out, and it can be so, there's like a sense of urgency, but it's like, where's that pressure coming from? Is that coming from us, or is it coming from other people that have been draining us and that have been putting pressure on us unnecessarily? And now we can't do that when we are avoiding responsibility, right? We're not escaping, we're not avoiding with the Pisces, we're learning that. So just kind of gauging what individual situations you might be thinking of when I'm talking about this, like, are you avoiding or are you self-advocating? Because there's a big difference. And it can be tricky, right, to know which is which. And that's kind of like the whole thing with the zodiac, is like, it's very tricky sometimes to know, are we acting out of the healed archetype, or are we acting out of the unhealed archetype? So you know, we have a really big transit coming up in April 26th. We have Uranus going to be moving into Gemini, and for now we have Uranus in Taurus at 28 degrees, and that could be a representation of extreme stubbornness in order to, like, if we are facing walls around needing to change, and we're facing resistance and fear and all that stuff, Uranus and Taurus might not actually be doing us that many favors, because it's this feeling of, I'm too stubborn, I'm set in my ways, I'm this big old fat bull that doesn't want to get up because I'm too lazy, and, you know, it takes me a while to move because I gotta hobble over there. Like, think of a bull laying down in the pasture, relaxing, having a nice time, completely maybe unaware of what's going on around him, but being like, all right, time to get up and go. And it's like, no, I don't want to. I'm comfortable here, you know? So the changes might be coming later with that Aries energy, because that might be sparking us to move. And it also is going to be paired with that Uranus and Gemini transit, where Gemini is a mutable air sign, and it's very changeable, it's very adaptable. And that, so just so we all know, like, if we are still feeling resistance, you know, here at the beginning of April with this full moon, just give it time. Just know that the awareness is there now, and, you know, we can't unsee what we've already seen, you know, like, it's, as much as we would like to unsee what we've seen with certain things, we can't. And there has to be action taken with this. So that is also connected with Mercury, which I said was gonna play a role here. Mercury is the trickster, and Uranus and Gemini could be around changing just to fit the status quo and to get people to like you, or to be like the chameleon type energy, where, you know, Gemini is another air sign like Libra, where there is a certain energy to air signs that need to be liked, and they need to be, you know, there's a very communal aspect to them. And as there is with all of us, because we all have all 12 signs somewhere in our charts, they're all in us. But with prominent air sign placements, there can be a tendency to, with Gemini, be like a chameleon, where, in a similar way to Libra, like, it might not have its own identity, it might be lacking substance, it might be, you know, just kind of like comfortable on the surface level and not really willing to go much deeper. And so that isn't good. We don't want that. We want the part of Gemini that is innovative, inventive, solution, you know, can like create new solutions, because we really need some new solutions right now. And Uranus and Gemini is actually like the genius archetype. So let's lean into that. And I'm going to talk more about that next video, really, because that's when it's happening. But I just want to for now, when we're talking about the changes that need to be made at this full moon, just know that at the end of April, that's coming, and we're going to feel a little bit more adaptable. And so I have so many notes, and I'm going to try to narrow it down. We also have Saturn sextiling Pluto the week before, or really like just 3 days before. And Saturn and Pluto sextile is a supportive aspect. Saturn in Aries sextile Pluto in Aquarius is maybe asking us to bring the heaviness that we're feeling into a group setting, and to remind ourselves that we are not alone, and that we might be the only ones going through our specific situation, but there are others that have been through similar situations that can relate to us, and that we can heal together in a group with. So getting ourselves out there perhaps in certain groups that resonate with us. I would say with Pluto and Aquarius, it's like subculture groups. So if you're feeling like super isolated by society in general, find yourself a subculture group that makes you feel like you're not so much of a like lone wolf or so much of a freak out on your own. And of course, like I've said before, Pluto and Aquarius is going to be about flying our freak flag high enough for others to see. So don't be afraid to fly that flag and to find your people and find your tribe, because that's what's going to be happening over the next 15, 20 years. So, you know, back to Libra, it's so easy for Libra to be reduced down to this like wishy-washy, can't make decisions because it's constantly weighing the scales, this lacking of identity, this lacking of being able to stand up for itself, when in actuality, in myth, Themis was not only one of the nurses that fed Zeus when he was a baby, but also his lover, one of his lovers, his second wife, technically. And she was the one who left him. She was the one who put him in his place. You know, not even Zeus was above the natural law. And so there's definitely something here that's happening about like the divine feminine holding up that cosmic mirror to the masculine and being like, look, it's time to weigh your heart, you know, like put your heart on the scales and to see where you're at. And on a less collective level, I think individually we've all been through a lot, and if individually you've been someone who's had to really let go of certain relationships because you found that it's been all been an illusion, you know, the illusion has been shattering on the massive scale and on the individual scale. Maybe like we're weighed down with what we've been through emotionally within our hearts. And there's a moment here with this full moon where we can remember the healing balm that Venus brought in with that Chiron conjunction. And now she's in Taurus. She's super happy and she can operate at her highest level. Taurus is about stability, being stable in our own self, being financially stable, being in tune with our birthright of entitlement to abundance, because Taurus is the earth goddess, and she represents everything that grows on the surface of the earth. And so knowing like how much abundance that holds, feeling like we are allowed to want those things and we're allowed to feel entitled to that, because that's not privilege. That's something that we all should feel entitled to, is like living outside of a place of survival and in a place of thriving and luxury, even opulence even. And you know, maybe all of us are coming back to realizing like that is where we want to land. Like that is the foundation that we want to build this new earth upon, is this idea that everyone has the right to a high quality of life, this idea that everyone is entitled to luxury and abundance and being well fed and being at ease and being, you know, able to lay in the field and kick up your heels and just listen to the birds and listen to the beautiful springtime, right, associated with Taurus. So, like, is that so much of a radical ideal? Is that really something that should be rocking the boat, as it were? Because if anything, what's going on now is rocking the boat versus that idea where why can't we just rest in this idea that everyone is going to be safe and taken care of? And that, again, is what Jupiter in Cancer wants everyone to have, is this feeling of safety and home and care and nourishment and emotional safety really is the top priority. And so, you know, let's continue to hold that. I think the majority of people who do this work with astrology are already on that page of like knowing that that's where we're headed and that's the frequency that we're holding for New Earth. And are we going to defend the heart of humanity, right? Because we don't want Aries to be reactive. We don't want to perpetuate the war archetype. We want to heal those wounds with Chiron Aries Venus conjunction. I'm gonna go ahead and pull a rune for us. Which rune do we need for this collective reading, please? Okay. I think this is the one we got last time. Quanin, torch, fire, malady, death, mortality, pain, ulcer. Fun one. Very fun. You know, I think with this Chiron Venus conjunction, this is a big deal because the chart ruler is Venus. So in Aries, there is a fiery purification no matter what's touching Aries. And I was thinking about how the wound in the heart is like festered at this point with Chiron and Aries because we've been working with it for a while, and now Venus is coming in to clean the wound. And what happens when we clean the wound is like, you know, you pour some alcohol in it or whatever, some healing stuff, and it burns because it's burning away the infection. And so let's let that be the fire that we're feeling and the pain that we're feeling, because it's important that we do recognize the pain and the grief, because like, just because I didn't mention it yet this video doesn't mean it's over yet, guys. Like the process of grief is a long one. The process of forgiveness is a long one. And we haven't even held these people accountable fully yet. Like, there's a lot of pain and betrayal and all these different trust issues and all this different stuff going on right now, rightfully so. And we're dealing with that, and we need to acknowledge that, or else we're just playing into the love and light only archetype of Libra, where it bypasses all the bad things just to keep the status quo. And it's like, no, we're not doing that. Not with the full moon opposing an Aries stellium. We're not doing that. We're taking the action to self-advocate. We are healing the wounding around the masculine within each of us. We are healing the wounding around our relationships and, great and small on a collective level, and on an individual level, we're taking responsibility for ourselves. We are really learning that no one is coming to save us. There is a story I did want to share about Aries that is attached to this, and I'll probably share it in the next video too, because it's just that potent, and it was just this kind of mind-blowing moment for me learning about him. So there's a story with Aries in a battle with two of Poseidon's sons that were giants, and they were twins. And they were going to overthrow Olympus or something, and Aries came in like by himself, full armor, sword at the ready, and got his ass handed to him like he had a tendency to do in battles, apparently. I'm going to get into all this in the next video. Like this, there's so much lore with Aries that is like just the key to unlock all this stuff. So just stay tuned to the next video. But this one's important, and I think it's worth telling twice. The evil giant twins stuff Aries in a jar. Okay? That's how bad it was. They stuff him in a jar where he is there for 13 months and stuck because no one even noticed that he was gone. Like, when I tell you that Aries lore is sad and he was abandoned and no one gave a shit about him, I am so serious about how he went 13 months in this bottle and no one gave a shit. No one even noticed that he was gone. Until finally one day, Mercury, once again we have Mercury coming into the story, Mercury just happens upon him and lets him out. Y'all, that's sad. That's really sad. But that whole theme was, really just with Aries, like knowing that no one is coming to save you. Yeah, Mercury did show up eventually, but like he wasn't on a rescue mission. He just happened to be there. And so, that's a very comforting note to end this on. But I just need us all to know that if you are still someone who is believing all the Disney stories that there's a Prince Charming gonna come save you, like, I hope that illusion has been shattered for you, because they ain't gonna save you. If anything, they're gonna act like they're saving you and then take all your power and energy and then leave you high and dry. So we already had a card fall out as I was speaking about that. And I'm using the Energy Oracle card deck, my very first card deck, and I got the Angel of Love. Guys, look at this. This is so beautiful. Angel of Love. She's holding a rose quartz crystal at her heart space. She's got poppies in her hair, actually. It looks like poppies. And, there's this beautiful orange, red, pink glow about her. And she's looking down at the heart, and she doesn't really look like super stoked. She's kind of like somber and just kind of solemn in her looking down at this heart. Up to this point, can we really do an honest check-in with our hearts at this time for this full moon and ask ourselves, what do we need in this moment? What do we need to nourish ourselves, to heal ourselves, to protect ourselves, to dismantle any barriers that we have around the heart that have kept showing up in cycles. So let's read it. It's tender connections. And it actually was reversed, so I'm going to read the reversed meaning. In the reverse position, the angel of love could indicate a possible disconnect in matters of the heart. While this sometimes signifies a divorce or separation, it could also imply an emotional rift where two people stay connected on a superficial basis, yet at a deeper level seem to be going their own ways. In this position, the angel can also refer to an old separation. If the longing remains alive in one partner's heart, if you find yourself unable to let go, this loving angel is telling you it's time to release any toxic or unrequited attachment you may be holding on to. The universe is waiting for you to free your heart and open your life to the fully present and honoring love that you so rightly deserve. So look in the mirror and see that the angel of love is there with you. Know that you are worthy of this tender emotion from yourself and with others. And this is the affirmation. So after I say this, maybe you can pause it and say it to yourself, or take some time later and say it to yourself if it resonates. The affirmation is, I love and value myself without limitation or condition. Tender, loving treatment comes to me in wonderful and unexpected ways. Yeah, Neptune and Aries. Unconditional love and compassion for self. Putting up barriers because we love ourselves so much. You know, boundaries are a sign of healthy love, are a sign of healthy relationship with self. And it takes guts to set boundaries. It takes courage. It takes directness. It takes that Aries energy to do those things and to set that boundary. So let's do what we need to do. Let's, remember that the angel of love is with us. Let's remember that love always wins no matter what. And if we are not aligned with love in the way that we are taking action, like if we're not taking action from a place of love and letting that be the foundation of all that we're moving from, we can pretty much guarantee that we're not going to win. And that is another big theme with Aries, is like he was always going into battle, moving from this place of anger and hatred and violence. And that's why he got his ass handed to him every single time, y'all. Just saying. Just saying. I'm really excited to talk about this Aries new moon, because even in this video, we have a stellium and it's been building, and it's just like, because yeah, Aries gets a bad rap, but he's just misunderstood, and he is, giving us the information that we need to unlock this male loneliness situation that we have ourselves in, that is spiraling out of control, that is absolutely unacceptably heinous at this point. And so yeah, I want to thank you all for staying to the end of this video, and again, like and subscribe, send this out, maybe make a comment below. It really helps my channel to grow, and I will see you in 2 weeks for the Aries new moon.